Welcome to this video tutorial on the Unit 20 Managing and Supporting Systems Mockup Practical. This will cover P5 and P6 of your coursework for Assignment 2. We have a couple of prerequisites. You must have a host machine with enough hardware that it can run at least 2 virtual machines simultaneously. This is because the server virtual machine must always be running, but you only have to have one client machine running at a time. You need a Windows 10 or 11 ISO, a Windows Server ISO, the XAMPP Installer, Google Chrome or a Firefox installer, the OSTicket repository, and VirtualBox or VMware Workstation, whichever works best for you. For this, we'll be using Windows 10 as a client machine, Windows Server 2016 for our server, Google Chrome, and we'll be using VirtualBox. As you can see here in my PC, I have a folder already made which has all my Unit 20 software that I currently need. You'll also need either Microsoft Office installer or a open source version of Office software for the purposes of this assignment. I highly recommend you make a folder like that in your documents, as we will be able to share that full folder with the virtual machine. The first thing I'm going to do now that I have VirtualBox installed is make a new system. My theoretical company is called Blue Deer in my example report, and we're going to call it Blue Deer-DC01. In an enterprise, a DC is a domain controller. Now this server will handle everything: domain, DHCP, DNS, Active Directory, so domain, and it will also host file sharing. In big enterprises, it will have many more rules but split out across multiple servers. This server is going to do everything for us. First thing I'm going to do is go to my ISO image, and I'm going to go into that folder and find my Windows Server ISO image. I'm going to untick Proceed with Unattended Installation, specify my virtual hardware so it has at least 3 gigs of memory, have 2 CPU cores, and make sure my disk is no bigger than 50 gigabytes, and click Finish. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to make a new one and just say Blue Deer PC01. This is just going to be one of my client PCs. I'm going to again select my ISO image and select my Windows 10 ISO image. Untick Proceed with Unattended Installation as it tends to have issues. 2 gigabytes RAM is enough, and I'm going to specify 2 CPU cores again and make sure it's not bigger than 50 gigabytes. Once I've done this, I can proceed to start my DC, domain controller server. Once you click start, you'll see on the right, it'll give me a notification that it's powering the VM up. Give this some time. The first power up can take some time. You'll see now a window is launched. I can maximize this, and I'm going to close my notification center on the right. And just like with a physical PC, it's now going to boot from the ISO or virtual disk file and begin installing the Windows Server software. Please be patient as this can take some time. You'll notice this right hand notification has popped up again. I am just going to close it again to maximize my screen space here. At the setup, I'm going to put my time and currency format to United Kingdom, press next, and install now. It'll now proceed like a normal Windows setup. Again, this will take a lot of time, especially being a virtual machine if you don't have a lot of hardware resources, so allow it to go through the setup process. Now it gives us 4 options. Make sure whichever option you pick, whether it's standard or data center, you pick one with the desktop experience. This provides you a graphical user interface. Without this, you would have to use a command line, and it would be increasingly difficult to evidence this for your coursework. So select a desktop experience, press next, and accept the terms. Click a custom install and find your drive. Make a new partition, click apply, OK, and in a second you'll see it gives us this partition too. We can click next, and the Windows setup will then begin copying over its files. Once this has all been completed, it will automatically reboot. As you just saw, it restarted after it finished installing and then asks to press any key to boot from CD or DVD. You don't want to do that, otherwise it'll attempt to reinstall Windows Server again and you won't actually get through to the operating system. Once this is booted, it will ask us to configure our password for our administrator user. Now that our VM is fully booted up, it's asking us to set an administrator password, and after this we'll be able to launch into the desktop. Make sure you use a password that you'll use for everything on here. Again, this isn't recommended in an actual setup, but for something that's not connected to the internet, that's okay. We'll click Input, Keyboard, and insert Control Delete to get to the login screen, and we'll type in the password that we just set and boot up into the desktop. While it's doing that, we're going to go down here and right click Network Settings. We're going to disconnect it from our host machine's internet and put it on its own internet system where it can communicate with the other virtual machines, which will be our clients. Change it from NAT to internal network, leave the name at internet, leave the adapter type, and change the promiscuous mode to allow virtual machines. Click OK, and it's now on its own internal network. You'll now see the Windows desktop begin to load, and then an application called Server Manager also load. At this point, I want to make sure that I can make the most of this virtual machine. So for VirtualBox, I'm going to go to Devices and insert Guest Edition CD image. Once I've clicked on that, I'm going to give the computer just some time to load. You'll know it's loaded once Server Manager has opened. Now Server Manager has opened, I'll open File Explorer by clicking on it on the bottom, go into this PC, and there's my VirtualBox Guest Editions. I'll double click that to run it. And then I'll double click VBox Windows Editions, click Next, Next, and Install, and it'll now install the drivers for it to be able to use the screen resolution and other features such as shared folders, which we will need to use. Now that it's finished this install, we'll need to select Reboot Now, click Finish, and your virtual machine will reboot again. Whilst it's doing this, we can go down here to where it says Shared Folders, Shared Folder Settings, and then we can click Add Shared Folder. We can input our folder path. For me, this is in my Documents, and it's under Unit 20 Software. I'll select that folder, and importantly click Auto Mount, OK, and OK. The virtual machine will now be able to see all that software I showed you at the beginning. I'm going to sign in again by clicking Input, Keyboard, and insert Ctrl-Alt-Delete, and enter in my password. The server won't immediately resize to my window, however it will with some time, as the drivers begin to load. And you'll see my virtual machine has just loaded to the correct window. If you want to get rid of all the other bars, you can hold your host key, which is normally the right control key, and the letter C. And what that'll do is put it into scaled mode, and if you go full screen, you get the full screen without any of the extra features. If I now go to File Explorer, this PC, I can now see my Unit 20 software folder. I'm going to copy everything that I need, so XAMPP, OSTicket, and Chrome, to my local downloads folder. Before I do anything in Server Manager, I'm going to install my required software, so XAMPP will come first. It may come up with a warning about user account control, just click OK. Next. I'm going to deselect everything but MySQL up here. Click Next, Next, and then it will begin to install. Whilst it's installing that, I'm going to start extracting my OSTicket software. Click Extract. And then inside that, we'll need to extract another folder. This may take some time, so whilst that continues, I'm now also going to install Google Chrome. The reason we're installing a third-party browser is that the old version of Internet Explorer on Server 2012 and 2016 doesn't work very well with XAMPP. So we have three things going on right now: XAMPP installing, our OSTicket being extracted, and Google Chrome installing. This may take a while, so again, please be patient whilst the machine configures these items. Google Chrome has finished installing, but XAMPP and the OSTicket extraction is still ongoing. What I'm going to do, again, whilst it's doing this so that I can save some time, is go into my settings. And I'm going to rename my server so that it's easily identifiable on the network. I'm going to go to my system, and then go to my about, and then click rename PC. I'm going to name it in line with what I called the virtual machine, so I'm going to call it the Blue Deer-DC01. Click next, and it will inform me that it needs to restart the PC in order for this to take effect. As I'm installing other software, I'll click restart later, and just close out of that. After I've restarted by installing the software, the PC name change will come into effect. Another thing I can do while this software is being installed is right click on my network, click Open Network and Sharing Center, and configure my static IP. It's really important on a network that your servers are at a static IP position, because otherwise the client PCs may go looking for the server, it may have moved IP address, and now they're unable to find it or resolve it. So I'm going to click Change Adapter Options once that window pops up, and then here's my Ethernet adapter. I'll right click Properties, and then for this simple mock-up network I'm going to disable IPv6 and just use IPv4. I'm going to double click it, click Use the following IP address. I'm going to use a 10.0.0.1 IP address because this server will also act as my router. It pre-fills in the subnet mask, but not in the way I want. I want 255.255.255.0. The gateway will be this server, so 10.0.0.1, as it's also the router. And then the DNS server will be 127.0.0.1. This means localhost, so again this looks to the server itself. Click OK, and then it'll say Identify a Network. It's fine that it has no network access, because again this isn't connected to the internet, this is just important for the client PCs to connect. Close out of that, and now we'll leave it to install and decompress these files. We'll see it's finished extracting the OSTicket files. We'll leave that minimized for now and let XAMPP finish installing. XAMPP is a software that will host our help desk software, so it's important we let this install correctly. Now that XAMPP has finished installing, I'm going to untick Do you want to start the control panel now and click Finish. I'm going to go to this PC, my C drive, which is my local disk, the XAMPP folder, and then the folder that says htdocs. This is where everything on the web server is stored. I'm going to delete everything permanently. And then that folder I just extracted has two folders in it, scripts and upload. Inside the upload folder, I'll select everything by pressing Ctrl A, and then copying it with Control-C and pasting it into the htdocs folder. This will upload all of the information that OSTicket needs to run its help desk service onto the web server. Now that it's almost finished copying everything over, that means we can now launch our XAMPP control panel. We're going to search for XAMPP in the Start menu. And open it from the Start menu at the top there. Close this. Close every File Explorer window you have open, there's no need for them right now. You'll see it shown up here in my system tray. And now the window is also loaded. I'm going to start Apache, which is the web server, and MySQL. I'm then going to go to Google Chrome. And we need to configure the database for where the tickets will be stored. In the top, I'll type 127.0.0.1/phpMyAdmin. If that doesn't work, you can also try localhost/phpMyAdmin. And give this a second to load. You'll see it's now loading the database web server. And what we need to do is create a new database for OSTicket to store its information. So up here we're going to click New. I'm going to name mine OSTicket and create that database. It says database has been successfully created. Now I need to create a user. Go to the Home section of phpMyAdmin, User Accounts, and Add User Account. In a real world system, you won't do this exactly. You'll make sure it's much more secure. I'm going to set the username to localhost, the password to the same as my Windows Server password, and then I'm going to grant it all privileges. Again, this is not what would happen in a real world system, and you would be much more stringent on what you would tick. This is the easiest way to get it set up so that it fully works though. Next, we can type in on a new tab just localhost. This should take us to the OSTicket installer. Here you see thank you for choosing OSTicket. Our requirements are ticked off, and now we can click continue. And continue. It says configuration file does not exist. Follow steps below to add-ons. To fix this, we're going to go into our files where it's hosted, this PC, the C drive, XAMPP, htdocs, and then we're going to go into the include folder. If we scroll down, you'll see that we have a file called OST_sample_config. We're going to rename this to ost-config.php. Now we're going to refresh our page, and you'll see it's now taken us to the installation. The help desk I'm going to name Blue Deer Help Desk, and then for now the email doesn't entirely matter. I'm going to put admin@bluedeer.local. I'm going to put my first name, my last name, and then put my fake email again. My username is going to be what I choose it to be, and my password I'm going to set to be the same one as my Windows Server password. Here it's asking for that database we just set up. I called it OSTicket. The username was localhost, and the password was the same as my Windows Server. I'll now click Install Now. It will now wait a few minutes for it to refresh once it's set up our help desk software. Now that it's finished configuring it, it says congratulations, and it shows your OSTicket URL. If we go to that, it'll take us to see our Blue Deer help desk, where we can open a new ticket and then provide information and submit that. We can also sign in. you'll see access is denied, and that's because we're not a user, we're an admin. So if we're to go to our staff control panel, we will be able to sign in with those details. Click login, and you'll see we have an admin control panel loading. Here we can configure everything, including our users. From the admin panel, I can click on Agent Panel up here, and this takes me to a website where I can see the tickets. I can also click on Users and add a new user. I can say test user at blueday.local, say test user as the full name, and click add user. It wants a valid email address, so for this one we might need to say .com. This step isn't necessary though, as people can still open a new ticket as a guest user. This is this portion set up. Our help desk is working. The next bit we need to go to is our server manager. Go to Start and then Server Manager. We're now going to install and configure the different services that our Windows Server needs. As a quick reminder, so far we have installed Windows Server 2016, configured a static IP address, renamed our server, installed XAMPP for hosting, downloaded OSTicket, installed Google Chrome, and configured our help desk software, OSTicket. Going back to our server, in the top right we'll click Manage, Add Rules and Features. Given we don't have our own dedicated router, this server will act as our router. We'll keep clicking Next until we get server selection and select this server. Click Next, and we want the Active Directory domain services, click Add Features, the DHCP server, Add Features, and the DNS server. The DHCP server will provide IP address leases to the other client VMs on the network, and the DNS server will help with routing of and resolving of different domain names. Click Next, Next again, and keep clicking Next through these. When you get to this final Confirm Installation selections, click Install. This may take some time, but the server will now install the necessary requirements for these different rules and features. Once it's finished installing, you'll see this screen. You can click Close. You'll see that our different rules have been added here on the Server Manager dashboard. Up in the top right, you'll see a little flag. We'll click Complete DHCP Configuration and click Commit. That's that done. And now we'll go to Tools, DNS, and we'll start configuring our reverse and forward lookup zones. In DNS, we'll double click on the server, go to Reverse Lookup Zones, right click New Zone, click Next, Primary Zone, IPv4, and then give it a network ID of 10.0.0. We won't configure the last point because we want this to apply to the whole range of DHCP addresses. We'll click Do Not Allow Dynamic Updates and click Finish. We'll now go to Forward Lookup Zones and create a new zone there, Primary, and then we'll name this zone something like blueday.local, something that our Active Directory domain will be. We'll click Next, Do Not Allow Dynamic Updates and Finish. Expanding the left menu, we'll now right click this and say New Host A or Quad A record. I'll set the name to Server and the IP address to be the IP address of my server. I'll tick Create Associated Pointer Record and Add Host. You'll see it has recorded server.blueday.local successfully. We can now close DNS Manager, go to Tools, and then DHCP. Once the DHCP Manager opens, we can again select our server on the left, go to IPv4, right-click it and create a new scope. Click Next, and give it the scope I'm going to name mine Office PCs. This scope is the range of IP addresses it will hand out to the client VMs. I'm going to say my start address is 10.0.0.50 and my end one is 10.0.0.150. In the brief it says 30 PCs, so 100 addresses is more than enough. I'll click Next, I'll ignore the exclusions and delays, set my leash duration to 8 days, this is how long the server is willing to give an IP address to a computer before potentially renewing it. It says, do you want to configure the DHCP options for this scope now? I'll click yes, and now it's asking for a router. Remember, we don't have a dedicated one. This server is the router. So we'll add the IP address of the server, click next, and then on domain name and DNS servers, this will also be the DNS server, and it already has the IP address there. We'll click next. We don't have a Win server, so we'll click next again, and we'll click yes, I want to activate the scope now, and finish. You'll now see our scope is there for the Office PCs and it's active. We can close the DHCP manager and go back to Server Manager, go to our flag and click Promote this server to a domain controller. This is where we will finally set up our domain. Once that is loaded, we will select Add a New Forest and put in our root domain name. That will be my company.local. Click Next. I will leave my functional forest level and domain functional level at the pre-selected ones, as there won't be any other servers we're using, and this will be the oldest OS on the network. I'm then going to specify domain controller capabilities and leave it at what it's selected. We don't want read-only domain controller, but what we do want to configure is the directory services restore mode password. I'm going to set this password to the same as my Windows administrator account login. So I will enter my password here and re-enter it in the one below. Click Next. DNS options I will leave, and then NetBIOS name, it will automatically fill out once this page is loaded. We see it's automatically filled out blue there. We'll click Next. We will leave the database log files and sysvol folders as it says. We'll review the options, and it will just verify the prerequisites for domain controller. You'll see here that one or more prerequisites failed, so let's just have a look at what these are. So because there's a name change pending, we need to reboot the computer before we can finish this. So we'll just close out of that wizard and give our Windows Server a restart. So now it's booted, we're back to our home screen. I'm just going to exit out of that view mode so I can insert Ctrl-Alt-Delete, log in as the administrator, and then the first thing we're going to do is continue with that setup of our domain controller. As the server manager is loading, we'll start to see the rules being populated here on our server. And then eventually it'll flag up that we still need to promote this one to a domain controller. So you'll see ADDS DHCP DNS is now flagged up. Up here, promote to a domain controller, and we'll just have to quickly fill out those pages again. You'll see now it says target server Blue Deer DC01 this time. So again, we'll add a new forest. We'll call it bluedeer.local. Hit next. We'll leave everything as is and just enter our same administrator password when it loads. So again, I'll just enter my administrator password here. Hit next. Next again. The NetBIOS name will automatically be pre-populated. There we go, it's pre-populated as Blue Deer. Click Next. We'll leave the system paths as they already are once it loads. Hit Next. Review the options. And this time it should pass the prerequisite check for the domain controller. You'll see it also says if you click install, the server automatically reboots at the end of the promotion operation. This time we see all prerequisite checks passed successfully, click install. We'll now install that and it'll begin setting this server up as a domain controller. We can now see it says you're about to be signed out. This computer is being restarted because the domain services was installed. Click close and give it a second, it'll begin to reboot your server VM. As our server virtual machine is booting up, it just says applying computer settings, and then it'll take us to the normal login page. Now that our VM has restarted back up, let us log back into it, and we can begin configuring it for our different users. You'll see the difference here is it now says our domain/administrator, so we're logging into the domain administrator account rather than the local server account. Once Server Manager has loaded, we'll begin adding our organisational units. In the brief it says that there are junior staff, managers and directors that we need to add. To do that, we'll click Tools in the top right corner and we'll go to Active Directory Users and Computers. Now the Active Directory Users and Computers menu has come up. We'll click on our domain here, and then we're going to right click and create a new organisational unit. We're going to make one for the junior staff. We're then going to do the same for managers, and then again for directors. In each of these, I'm just going to create a new user. Just going to name the first one Junior Test and then give a login name, so jtest@bluedeer.local. I'm going to set the same password as I have for everything else in this video. And just click password never expires so that they don't have to change it when I first log on. I'm then going to do the same for my other users, so manager test, user login name mtest, password never expires, and click next. And then finally a new user for the directors. Just make sure it says password never expires, click OK, next and finish. We now have 3 organisational units with a user in each of them. Now that I have these, I'm also going to make 3 new security groups, so click new group, junior staff, set it to global and security, and then right click our junior test account, add to group, and then type in junior staff. Click check names. If it underlines it, it's validated it, click OK, and it's been added to a group. Repeat this for managers and directors, so manager staff, OK, right click our manager test, add to a group, manager staff, check names, OK. You have now created 3 organisational units, 3 test accounts with 1 user in each of the OUs, and then created a security group for each of them. Next, we're just going to set up some of our folders. So for this instance, and this again would not happen in Industry, we're going to go to a C drive, make a new folder called Shares, and then the 3 folders it dictates are General, Policies and Procedures, Management, and then I'm also going to do one for things like my shared wallpapers, so I'm just going to call it MISC for miscellaneous. In my shared folder with the VM, I have my wallpaper here. It is a .jpeg which works best with Windows Server with this instance, I'm just going to drop that here in my MISC folder. Later, we'll use group policy to make sure that this wallpaper is applied to all of the client machines. For now, we've done a lot on the server, so I'm going to shut down the server just for the time being, and I'm going to start working on my PC01. Remember, we already connected the Windows 10 ISO to this, so when we power up this VM, it should begin to allow us to install Windows 10.